I believe this is a question that a lot of people still had quite a hard time putting their fingers on. How does a man become so emotionally distant and cold, not occasionally or only when they have a bad day, but all the time, like literally, to a point where one could say that he is a pathological psychopath or a person who simply doesn't have a space in his heart for any kind of empathy, a robot made of actual flesh and bones? Some people might say that they're just born with it, but I think the same people also secretly have the notion that it might have something to do with their upbringings. And they'd be right, because quite a lot of our attitudes, behaviors, and characteristics are actually formed during our childhood. The role that our parents and environments play in terms of cultivating and forming the foundational base within our psyche is absolutely critical for our adult years. Someone who has very affectionate and caring parents will lead to him displaying a lot of care, warmth, and empathy towards the people that they are close with. Similarly, someone who has distant, disregarding, and unaffectionate parents, or parents who rarely or barely showcase a caring, considerate, and intimate attitude toward their children early on, will eventually lead him to display a lack of compassion, generosity, and sentiment toward other people just because they are quote-unquote conditioned to behave or have an attitude like so. They are not born with it. They are just incidentally accustomed to be like it. However, it is not just our childhood that could cause us to form a solid foundation of certain attitudes, behaviors, and characteristics. As I'm sure you gentlemen know already, major traumatic events could also play a vital role in shifting or rearranging one's psychological blueprint, even in our adulthood. Experiencing trauma usually leads to an individual forming what I call the counter-biasness. Basically, in a specific circumstance where you encounter a traumatic event, you will more than likely develop a set of attitudes and behaviors that completely oppose against anything that is closely related or associated to that event. For example, if you nearly drowned yourself in the ocean, you will more than likely try to avoid submerging yourself in the bathtub or even going close to a mildly deep swimming pool in the future. If you burn yourself quite significantly, you will more than likely become extra cautious of anything that is easily flammable or discard anything that is associated with fire, like a matchstick. It's all part of our survival instincts and natural defense mechanism. Our extreme emotional reactions that we experience during major traumatic events will always be significantly potent enough to register a pre-encounter defensive response relating or surrounding that specific circumstance. Similarly, if a man's will or extensively invested care, warmth, and intimacy towards someone and/or a group of people is abruptly taken away or worse betrayed, he will more than likely develop an integral response to shun himself from forming a very close bond with anyone in the future, developing an avoidant attachment syndrome, where if he feels like he is starting to catch feelings with anyone, being too friendly with anyone, or getting a bit too intimate for comfort, he will abruptly back out and detach himself from expressing his feelings or displaying any form of empathy and consideration, a bit of a necessary evil to contain some underlying insecurities and in order to protect himself from those traumatic consequences. Such examples can be a man who had a very close relationship with his parents, spends a tremendously meaningful amount of time with them, but then they got abruptly taken away in a horrific accident. A man who developed a seemingly unbreakable bond of association or camaraderie with someone, but then got dramatically broken due to underlying envy or jealousy manifesting into a stab in the back. And a man who sincerely and wholeheartedly loved a woman for a long time with all his trust and faith, but then she suddenly betrayed his commitment unreasonably out of nowhere. Though having said all of these, not all men will surely become emotionally withdrawn due to these traumas. Some men can become consumed with rage and vindictive pursuits that they condemn everything and everyone that is involved with their misfortunes, or in other words, becoming the embodiment of the victim mentality. Despite a cold-hearted man's seemingly despicable or rather putrid attitude towards affection and intimacy, they are actually or secretly what he wants to sincerely and wholeheartedly experience the most. He may not vividly and reassuringly admit it, but it's something that always persists deep down in his mind. Underneath all that eternally stoic, stern, and unreactive appearance lies a man who is still patching his wounds and searching for answers. Especially as human beings, we cannot completely betray our nature to fulfill our social needs of love and belonging. Even toddlers who could not understand an ounce of what they feel need a sufficient amount of physical touch and affection, otherwise they would die. However, it's going to take a lot of time, convincing maturity, and most importantly, answers to lingering, unresolved personal questions in order for him to embrace that part of his humanity once again. Because as we all know, pain is everyone's greatest teacher. Injuries, being penniless, hunger and heartbreaks. You gentlemen know all of these. And the greater the pain, the clearer the dire memories, the harder is the result. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and like the video. God bless you.